Hi everyone, and welcome to the new episode of our Brown Bag Meetup series. I'm your host Alec, and today we've got our guest Eugene Morozov, who will be giving a presentation on indisputable elections. And we also will have our colleague Daniel Simpson, who will help me with moderation and questions. If you're new here, this event is hosted by the blockchain professionals community, and we've got such meetups twice a month on Tuesdays. And if you want to find our recordings of the previous sessions, you can visit our YouTube channel and subscribe to our social media pages. So we also have got many other activities. We've got conferences, articles, podcasts, and many other interesting things. And our next big event is the Blockchain Professionals Hackathon, which will take place on Thursday. And if you haven't registered yet, please visit our website and check out our social media pages. So I will now invite our guests. Hi, Eugene. Hi, Daniel. How are you?
Hello, Alec. Hello, Daniel.
Hi guys.
Hi. So before we start, just to let you know that if you have any questions, just leave them in the comment section on YouTube, and we will try to answer them at the end of our today's session. So let me bring your screen to the stage. So yeah, I hope we can see it now. Please,
Thank you, Alec.
Evgeny. Yeah, the stage is yours. Good
Thank
luck.
you very much. Hello, everyone. My name is Eugene Morozov, and today's presentation, in some ways, is a follow-up from the one Joe Anugo made previously about decentralized elections. So let me start by first highlighting the use cases, what this can be who this can be relevant for. DeVote is created for a number of users. First of all, colleges and universities elections can be run using DeVote. We also have condominiums, co-ops and country clubs, sports societies, uh, businesses, corporations, shareholders can vote on meetings agenda, LLCs, and DAOs. And then finally, this can be used for political elections, local, state, and eventually federal. And as I said, this is pretty much a follow-up of the previous speech. What Joe said is that in order for any decentralized election product to be successful, it needs to be adopted by a lot of people. So mass adoption is critical. There should be no need to trust anyone. It must be very secure, cryptographically protected. There is also a consideration of private versus public elections. And it is very important to have an appropriate consensus protocol that will be used in voting. So all of that has been considered in DeVote. First of all, it runs on Everscale network, which is linearly scalable and really allows you to have any number of smart contract executions per second as long as you bring enough validators. Let's see how DeVote works. It is based on a Groth 16 end-to-end decentralized ballot marking and return system on blockchain. We believe that there are certain characteristics of voting that are absolutely necessary. It must be open for all. Anybody should be able to participate directly from comfort of their homes on their smartphone. They have to be very fast. The tallying of the results has to be able to be shown in a reasonably short period of time. Also, we believe it must be convenient, definitely affordable. We know that uh, presidential and congressional elections in the US during the last cycle cost over $15 billion. We believe it should not be like that, and it should be a lot more affordable. Of course, it must be secure, but most importantly, it should be indisputable, which we know During, again, the last cycle, there were a lot of accusations of improprieties. We think that should not be happening, and nobody should be able to dispute. So the cost of elections at the moment globally is staggering. Just one cycle, congressional races, $8 billion, presidential race, $6 billion in the US. Unacceptable. We believe it should be much, much cheaper. Now, what is the problem at the moment? No existing remote ballot return system is open source, decentralized, and compliant with the legal requirement of permanent separation of voter affidavit and voter ballot. This severely limits the use of mobile voting in the world. So we at Everscale decided to change that. So what do we have today? The solution, we call it DeVote, a remote ballot return system. It is end-to-end decentralized in its core at the moment. So the actual analysis and tallying of the results is fully decentralized. It is 100% on-chain. It is based on a wondrous technology called Groth16. It is running on linearly scalable Everscale blockchain. So we can basically manage as many transactions or votes as needed. It is 100% compliant with that voter anonymity requirement. It is open source, so anybody can go in and see that there are no bugs, no backdoors, and audit the code. And it's also free for people to use the code itself, so that you can go and adapt it to your particular needs. If anybody needs help, we're here to assist as well. So how it works, you need to do a basic setup. Organizer collects a list of voters' public identifiers. Then the voting period starts. Voters submit their ballots publicly. And then the tallying period. Organizer tallies all the votes using DeVote. The technology is available on GitHub. This is the link. Anybody can go and see. It's at github.com/Neil Foundation/Vote Saver Protocol. You're welcome to go and look. A few things about how this project came about. It started in November 2020 with the infamous MIT paper, which criticized the use of blockchain in election systems. So we in Everscale community decided to do something about it and had a wide discussion what can be done. And then we ran a contest for the best implementation of Groth16 voting protocol technology, which was won by a company called Neil Foundation. Ever since that moment, we were talking to a number of practitioners, including Wintergreen Research in the US, run by legendary Susan Eustace, who created the first counting machine in the United States many, many years ago. And we have a number of other partners in the US and other countries which are eager to implement the technology. In May of this year, 2022, we ran the first pilot at the Government Blockchain Association meeting in Washington, D.C., where participants of the conference voted for the best NFT at the art show, which was accompanying the conference. And then at the moment, we have a variety of planned pilots, both at universities and commercial entities, which are interested in this technology. Why are we ready now? Basically, the MVP is here. We already achieved the end-to-end decentralized core functionality, and we successfully performed the first pilot in Washington, D.C. So those are basically the things I wanted to start with. There are a number of quite interesting references that we give here, including to the original MIT paper, which criticized the use of blockchain, and the official requirements by US leading authoritative organizations that deal with voting. So that briefly what DeVote is all about. I'm happy to answer any questions the audience may have.
So please feel free to leave your comments and questions. Let me check the live chat. I think there are no questions yet, but Daniel, maybe you have any comments?
Nothing at the moment, Alex. That's I think Evgeny can continue. We could have a Q&A towards the end of the session.
Okay.
Nothing at the moment, guys. That's maybe Eugene can carry on. We can we can address questions, have a Q&A a little bit later
Yes, of course. So let me go back to some of the critical items that are listed on this slide. So mass adoption. Um, there are very few blockchains at the moment that are capable of handling even hundreds of thousands of applications or transactions at the moment. And that's very, very critical to do so. In order to be able to service a large market where with a large number of voters, you really have to be linearly scalable. What that means is basically that the number of transactions should only be limited by the number of validators. So if you bring enough validators, then our blockchain, Everscale, can process any number of transactions. How it is done? It is done due to a unique architecture of our blockchain, which is asynchronous and multi-thread and multi-shard. So essentially, you spread the task among subsets of validators as you need. And that allows you to really offer this technology for mass adoption. We believe that's the best solution in the market today. And we invite everyone to take a look at Everscale capabilities. You will find all of that information at the website everscale.network. Now, the next critical component of success of elections is that there should be no need to trust anyone. And that is taking care of an amazing mathematical concept of Groth 16. I encourage our listeners to do some reading about it and see how it actually works. Now, cryptographic protection is also critical here. You want, of course, the election to be secure, and you want nobody to be able to in any way affect the results. So that is achieved by very complex cryptographic methods used. We also need to talk about private versus public. Some companies or organizations would want to run private elections, and that is entirely possible. So, for example, if a corporation has a shareholder meeting coming up and it needs its shareholders to provide their votes for or against a certain proposal, this can be run as a private vote, which can be controlled by the company management. At the same time, when you talk about political elections, they must be public. Municipal, state elections, governors' elections, and presidential and congressional elections. They must be public so that everybody can see that there is no central control. Nobody can affect the result of the vote in any possible way. Another important criteria that must be observed is a consensus protocol. How many people need to come in order to vote for the vote to be successful? And also how many of them need to vote for a particular candidate for that candidate to be elected. So what we use is a modified Byzantine tolerance protocol, which allows us to essentially have 66% of those who came to vote, if they approve a particular candidate, that candidate will be elected. So those are some of the fundamental characteristics of DeVote that I would like to mention. At the moment, we have, as I said, core functionality, which is fully end-to-end decentralized. The code is open. Anybody can come and audit. It is very fast. Today, we have tested 130,000 voters, and the results were achieved in under 8 hours. That is a very fast result. It's very convenient. The website, DeVoteUSA.com, is very simple, and anybody with a smartphone can come and use it. The cost of those votes, well, the transaction cost on Everscale network is very low. It's under 10 US cents. So you can imagine how much of savings an election campaign can realize by using DeVote. And most important, it's indisputable because the code allows you to tally the results without any doubt or question. Ladies and gentlemen, I invite you to take a look at DeVoteUSA.com and come to us with any questions or assistance you may need. Thank you, Alec.
So we've got one question in the chat from Georgely Shakat. I'm sorry if I misspelled your name. It says, how are the public identifiers of voters get collected?
Well, first of all, the election committee has a list of eligible voters, right? So that is determined by the voting authority. So they will need to provide those in order for us to match the voter ID with the identifier of a particular voter.
Is there a secure way that that happens, Eugene? So, I mean, that would be a kind of an offline process, I guess, right outside of the blockchain decentralized voting system.
Well, but the list of voters is eligible voters is public, right? So there should be a possibility to verify that indeed what list of elections of voters was used matches eligible voters.
Okay, thank you. And another question from Pavel about solution extensibility. Do you see the question on the screen? It's pretty long.
Right, let me read it. Solution extensibility, population number to be covered, city, region, country. What about energy consumption involved, approximate costs, validators to cover 10 million people? That's a great question. At this time, we have not been able to test that many. As I said, the largest number we have tested is 130,000. And because Everscale network is a proof of stake, not proof of work, its energy consumption is actually very, very low. So the transaction cost itself, as I said, including all the payments to validators, is under 10 cents for one transaction. So it's a very, very small number again. But when we will be able to test it in the millions, we will certainly publish the actual results as well. Thank you for that question. That's a very good one.
Okay, and I think there are only these two questions. Let's wait for some more.
I think we can continue. If Evgeny, I think I don't see anything else for now. So yeah, feel free to continue when.
Well, let me tell a little more about the roadmap that we have. So there are a couple of challenges ahead of us. Let me go back to the roadmap. So at the moment, as I said, we have only core end-to-end decentralized functionality. And what we do not do fully decentralized yet is actually the web interface. At the moment, we do use servers, private servers. So that is the first thing we're working on right now. We expect that to be completed in about 2 months' time. Another reasonably complex question and task is a national localization. For example, if we talk about elections at a national level in the United States, it is very likely that validator locations or passports will be limited to US only. And that presents a certain challenge. We would have to use geo-targeting or proof of nationality of validators in order to be able to comply with that requirement. That is rather complex, and we plan to resolve this issue in the next 4 to 6 months. Also, as I said, today we have only tested on up to 130,000 voters. While, of course, in the United States, there are more than 150 million registered voters. So we still have quite a few things ahead of us to be able to offer DeVote to national level elections. But we're working on that, and I believe we should be able to do that by the end of the year. That is probably what I wanted to share. I would like to thank the Government Blockchain Association under the leadership of Gerard Descher for full support of DeVote and giving us an opportunity to pilot DeVote at the GBA conference, Blockchain and Infrastructure, in May of this year. That's about all I wanted to say today. Thank you.
So,
Yeah, so I think just checking our question board. Nothing just yet, but guys, if you for anyone viewing, if you do have anything that you want to ask Evgeny, just feel free to type that into the chat in YouTube, and we can bring your question on screen, or just speak that out loud. But until we do, I had a couple of things, sort of discussion points, I think, probably more than anything. So you mentioned about the speed of the system, yeah, okay, and that's you were saying that the system is extremely quick. It can process thousands, possibly hundreds of thousands of votes. Does that mean that there's in a way that you're compromising security, meaning that potentially there are less validators within the system to secure the data that's going in there, or do you feel that you don't need to compromise that? Because I think there's this concept called the blockchain trilemma, where you're sacrificing, say, speed for for more kind of security in the way that the data is being updated on the system. So, any comment on that one?
Yes, it is a well-known problem. And again, the asynchronous nature of Everscale blockchain and its multi-shard and multi-thread architecture allows us to have groups of validators work concurrently, and the number of those validators is mathematically determined. So it is never less than is required to confirm the results. So we believe that this well-known trilemma is resolved by the unique architecture and by the calculation of the number of validators needed for each part of the job. So at the moment, as I said, we have 130,000 votes processed in under 8 hours. We will strive to significantly reduce this time, and we're working on that right now, so that we're hoping that elections in the millions will also be done on the same, results will be tallied on the same day. That's a technical challenge, but we believe we know how to resolve it.
Sure. Yeah, that makes sense. And I guess I guess the validators themselves, they're not seeing what they're validating, right? It's not like they can see,
No.
this person A is voting for, this party B, so there's no kind of possibility of a kind of collusion in that respect, right?
That is directly prohibited by the law. The voter affidavit or identity must be completely separate from voter bulletin or the choices of the voter, and that is a very strict requirement. So the technology, Growth 16, allows you to prove that somebody voted without knowing how. So it's a very important question, and the answer is nobody knows.
So the vote remains, I guess, anonymous, right? Like you said, just has to comply with whichever laws govern that election in whichever jurisdiction or country that's.
Yes, we are striving to comply with U.S. law at the moment as being very strict and very specific, and it directly prohibits anything but permanent separation of
Sure.
voter affidavit and voter bulletin.
Sure. How would I prove that my vote counted? So let's
Yes.
say I cast my vote on a given day, and I see the result, and I'll see that there's like an aggregated result. So 20,000 people voted for person A, 40,000 person B, but I know that my vote should have counted in whichever one I voted for. But is there a way that I can prove that with a kind of some way mathematically, for example?
Yes, essentially, this is one of the requirements as well, that every voter should be able to audit his or her vote. This is not yet implemented in our front end on the website yet, but it absolutely has to be before we go to political election. That's just a must. And again, technology does allow you to do that, to make sure that your vote has been submitted and properly accounted for. So yes, the answer to that question, definitely.
Sure. And I was on that sort of train of thought. I was just thinking about impersonation. So, I guess in a physical world, you get the taking of someone's identity, and they would come in and take over your vote. You would come later, and they'll say, hang on a minute, this person's already voted. Is there a kind of a sort of a built-in protection in that respect?
That's an important issue, the ID management. There are a number of solutions that we're using now, and they will be implemented in the final version of the product as well. There are several types of methods that can be used to prove identity of the voter. Of course, a government document is one. Biometric data is another one. Social media presence and analysis is the third one. And the fourth one we're looking at is kind of similar to what banks use to approve your credit line. For example, asking questions that only you would know the answer to. Now, each one of those methods individually can potentially be breached. However, if you combine those, the cost of breach is prohibitive. So we believe by combining several methods of ID management, we can achieve very, very reliable identification of a voter.
Yeah, sounds great. Sounds very secure, and that a lot of things are being thought of in the design of this system, so it's so that it can be used in a very real situation. Also, just thinking that with regards to the ID, somehow that has to your kind of whichever ID you're using to identify yourself in the voting process. I guess that could be like a national ID card or a driver's license. I guess somewhere you need to connect that physical document, right, to a key or to a number within the voting system, right? So is there? I mean, could you sort of outline roughly how that works, if that's not too technical a question?
In the US, it is primarily driver's license. So the data is read from the license itself, and then it is matched to the roster to make sure that this particular person is eligible to vote. Again, we're assuming that the list of eligible voters is available uh, and is produced by the election committee or election commission, and that's what we go by at the moment. So, a driver's license or passport, those are the documents that we can accept. And we believe, as far as state documentation goes, those are.
Sure, and that am I right in saying then that whichever document is chosen, driver's license or passport, that number doesn't get entered into any ledger specifically, right? Is that like, do you have like a representation of of a document number, like a hash value or something like that?
Yes, it is only a hash value that is being used. We obviously do not keep any copies of any document. We are just identifying the person to make sure that his or her name is on the roster of eligible voters, and that is the only time
Sure.
that is used. But again, as I said, it's also used with a combination of other factors. A person needs to identify himself or herself through a variety of methods.
Sure, sure. And that happens outside of the blockchain specifically, I guess, right? Because you can't blockchain everything, can you?
Well,
Yeah, although it would be nice to add, I guess even you mentioned like the roster, it's not possible to
eventually, we
have to
think
have some trusted party somewhere, I guess.
eventually we believe all of this should be on chain. And I think that the world is slowly but surely moving towards that situation. Again, the very characteristics of blockchain, immutability, timestamp, that would allow much higher levels of protection that any solution that is used today offers. So we are hoping that eventually everything that requires security and trust will be on chain.
Sure. We look forward to that day. I think if everything can be secure. Um, Just checking our board actually, just to see, just to make sure we don't have any more questions uh, as I'm hogging the question time at the moment, but I can't see anything currently. So I just wanted to loop back briefly to the validation process. Um, so if we're saying within the DeVote system that the validators, it's a fairly reliable and fair and provable process. But who are the validators themselves? I mean, we're saying it's a proof of stake
Yes.
system. Is there some discussion about where those people should be nationality wise? Does that have an implication on where they are? Should they all be in the same within the country, for example?
Yes, this is driven by national laws. At the moment, as I said, we don't have yet the capability to localize. So our validators are located globally. Usually, those are professional IT companies that run nodes. We use Rust language nodes to ensure the fastest possible speed. Speaking about speed, the term we use is latency. And latency of Everscale network has been demonstrated over open internet to be 50,000 steps, smart contracts executions per second. We believe it's a world record. At least we have not seen anything documented with a high latency than that. Another parameter, which is also critical for the network, is network finality. And for any financial transaction, you first want to see sub-second finality. We at the moment have something close to 2 seconds, and we're working on reducing that. But still, even 2 seconds is pretty fast. And the third parameter, which is critical, again, is the cost. So, as I said, at the moment, the cost of one transaction is less than 10 US cents, which is way cheaper than some of the other networks that we're aware of. But the localization is an important issue. Um, I believe most countries would want to see validators to hold their passports. I'm almost certain that that's the case in the US. So, using some mechanism like geo-targeting to confirm physical location or passports of validators to make sure that they're Americans, for example, if we're talking about the US, will be required. We're not there yet, but this is something that we'll have to do in order for DeVote to be used in any kind of national election. So there's still a lot of work ahead on that.
Sure, sure. Yeah, I guess everyone has to have a trust in the system, right? And that can be, I suppose that can be two ways. That you can technically prove that trust through, for everyone that understands the mathematics and the cryptography around the system, but at the same time, you have to satisfy a lot of non-technical people at certain levels, and I guess those are probably so two different things, I'd imagine, in some ways.
Well, you have to comply with the law, right? In addition to offering some technical marvels, you really have to demonstrate and prove that you're fully compliant. Like this permanent separation of voter identity and voter bulletin is just one example. Location of validators or people who confirm the elections, essentially election results, they must be located in the country. That's another one, but there are many more. Like the law is very complex. You have to comply with every single requirement, and this is what makes any kind of remote uh, ballot marking and return system so complex to build because it has to be compliant. That's a lot of work.
Sure, absolutely. I guess a final one from me then, Eugene, if there's nothing else from our main audience out there. The future, yeah, how long is it going to be, do you think, before we see well, electronic systems and then decentralized electronic systems, I guess, controlling all of our local council and national elections in the future?
Yeah, that's a great question. There's still a lot of work to be done. At the moment, we are fully equipped to help universities, companies, like homeowner associations, condominium, country clubs. Uh, those users can use the vote right now. When we're talking about municipal elections, so anything more than 150,000 people, we're not there yet. We believe that we will get to that in a matter of maybe 4 to 6 months to start the first local political elections. And then the state and national, probably a matter of 2023. Again, because of the significant number of legal requirements that we have to. So we have a long road ahead of us. We love the challenge. I think it will be fascinating to work on this, and providing the ultimate result may lead to people significantly changing their behavior instead of going to a polling station, where, as we know, sometimes there are long lines, or sometimes those requiring you to drive for an hour or two. Instead of that, I think if people are comfortable and trust the IT system that is available directly from their smartphone, we're talking about a significant change in motor behavior. In addition, I think we will see a significant increase in the number of voters participating. As I said today, there are 100 million or so registered voters in the US, of which only a small fraction actually votes. So we would love to see that change and make elections more inclusive, make sure that people use the convenience and security of mobile solution and use it at the election. That should increase participation significantly. And I think that on its own, that would be a wonderful result. Not only we can guarantee uh, that the results are indisputable, but we're hoping to actually involve many more people in the democratic process. So that on its own is a great goal, don't you think?
Yeah, I kind of hadn't thought about it in that way, that we're not only just replacing the system for those people that are already voting, but you could just significantly increase the number of people that would suddenly decide to vote purely because they can do it in a much more simple electronic way, in the same way that they would do any other online interaction.
That's
When
right. And plus, it will offer a chance to vote to people who are, let's say, overseas, serving in the military, or people that are in the hospital, that are ill, or senior citizens that, due to maybe poor health, are not able to go to the polling station. So all of those, would be added. And we believe that increase in the number of votes on its own is a wonderful result if we're able to achieve it.
I think that's a very positive summary and vision to yeah to wrap things up today. Let's hope that all that becomes a reality in the not too distant future, for sure.
Yeah, we're hoping.
Okay, guys, so let's then conclude our today's webinar. Thank you all for attending, and we hope you have learned and enjoyed our today's presentation too. And you guys, the Eugene, Daniel, thank you so much for the great discussion, for answering all those questions, and for the great presentation. It was a pleasure to have you with us.
Thank you very much for the opportunity.
Thanks. Bye bye.
Bye bye.
Thanks, guys.